it has been 4 years since I bought this display, and I must admit, I love it, but I also hate it. So what I love about ultrawide displays is just the sheer size of them. In this case, this is 49-inch display, and it's similar as if I would had two 27-inch display next to each other. But in this case, this is only one. And without any borders between them, this just gives you a huge canvas you can work on. And it's really good for productivity because it doesn't matter if you have one application and you want it full screen, for example, if you have a huge Excel file or if you have some video editing software and you just want to have a huge timeline, you can use it as you want. On the other hand, if you are using several applications at the moment, if you have two displays, you can use basically only two, because if you split on one screen, it's just too tiny. In this case, you can use three, because even if you split it on three parts, it's still basically as large as on normal display. So you do not lose anything. So for productivity, this is just way better than a normal setup with two displays. Another thing is also the cleanness of the setup, especially cable management. You do not need as many cables. In my case, I have MacBook for work and I have gaming PC. So that means I have 3 cables here, but if I would have 2 separated displays, I would need 6 of them. Quite a huge difference. So for cable management, this is just way better. But most people probably want to buy this because of gaming. And I can understand, because quite frankly, it's amazing. Because if game supports this resolution, this ratio, it's amazing. It's immersive, it gives you just way more information, and I can see that you can have really competitive advantage here. Because for example, in Counter-Strike, you can see corners. In World of Tanks, in World of Warcraft, you just are surrounded by environment, and it just gives you way more information than you would normally have on normal screen. So the field of view is just way more wide. Now, unfortunately, there are some disadvantages, and let's start with the big one. Quite literally. This. This is stand for this monitor, and it's huge. I have 180 to 80 centimeters table, which is basically the biggest standard you can buy, at least here in Europe. Probably there is something bigger in America. But this stand occupies like 40% of this table. So in case you have really small table, like 140 to 60 centimeters, basically all the table will be only this stand. Of course, there is other type of stand, which is a little bit smaller, but if you will buy something like this, good luck. You will probably need monitor arm. That gets me to issue number 2, monitor arm. When I bought this display, there basically wasn't any. There was only one, which cost like 400 euros, so incredibly expensive. Now, this year I was able to buy this monitor arm, which cost me like 100 euros, so quite cheap actually, and it should support like 20 kilos. This display, by the way, has around 40 kilos, something like that. But it doesn't work properly. I can adjust height, I can adjust like angles, but I can't tilt it because the joint is just way too weak, and if I want to tilt it, it's not possible. I had to basically fix it, and it's on its limit. Like if a fly would land on this display, it will fall down. So this is another issue. If you want to buy a monitor arm, expect that it will be expensive. And by the way, this is not the biggest display you can get. You can get 57-inch, and in that case, well, good luck with that. I was speaking about gaming, that it's fantastic, and it is. Unless it's not supported on this resolution. And for example, if you want to play some strategy games, you might have an issue here, because usually the games think that, well, I'm on normal display, so it looks ugly, and mainly it's uncontrollable with mouse. So if you are into RTS games, maybe, just maybe, look for some normal displays. I mean, you can solve this by picture mode, but some displays do not have one. I will get to that later. My fourth complaint is that there is not really a huge selection of them. I mean, currently there is quite a lot of displays, but all are basically the same. And if you want OLED, there is only few of them. If you want some specific resolution, good luck with that. if you want some specific technology or, I don't know, some connectivity. And connectivity is a huge issue here because quite a lot of them do not have Thunderbolt port. And if you have something like MacBook Air, you will need to charge MacBook Air and then you will need to buy some reduction for HDMI or DisplayPort. So you will occupy both of your ports. And this quite frankly sucks. And usually if there is a display with Thunderbolt, it has some other flaws. Another issue is reliability. Especially when I bought this, it was a huge issue because basically every other display had some issues. Either they were really unreliable or they had just some issue with color or with display itself, that the colors were bad or the uniformity. By the way, uniformity issue is quite wide here because the display is just huge. And if you have like gray color over the display, it's usually like 50 shades of gray. Of course, you also need to feed this display. I'm not talking about power, but about signal. For example, in my case, I have MacBook Pro M1, which has HDMI 2.0, and it supports 4K resolution. But this display has wider resolution than 4K, although the number of pixels is lesser than in 4K. And that means I cannot provide a signal using HDMI. I can, but it scales and it looks bad. So I need reduction. And if you have older PC or you are using some dock or dongle, which has only HDMI 2.0 or maybe some older version of DisplayPort, you might have the same issue. Especially if you want to buy dual 4K display. You might encounter some issues here. And of course, if you want to buy dual 4K display, you probably need some graphics cards which will support the dual 4K gaming, because I can imagine that the power needed to support for dual 4K gaming will be quite huge. Now, let's give you some tips on what you should look. Well, I have mentioned reviews, definitely. I'll repeat myself here, but measure twice, cut once. I would definitely want picture by picture. That means that you can split the screen into two parts, which you can basically use with each individual input. So either you can use two computers to fuel it, or if you want to, example, play some strategy game, you can use this mode to play it. Also, if you have, for example, iPad, it doesn't support ultrawide displays. So you will split the screen and you can use iPad with external screen. I would want at least 49-inch with dual quad HD resolution. Anything lesser than that, I don't think it's really good. I think it's a little bit too small because this is like 27-inch equivalent, doubled. And I think it's the sweet spot. And last, but definitely not least, the most important part is the curve. In my case, I have 1000R. That means that if there would be circle with this display, it would have a diameter of 1 meter. Diameter, radius. And this is really important because it surrounds you. This is what makes the immersive feeling. Either if you are playing game or even if you are working. And if you would have something lesser than that, like 1800R is, I would say, standard, unfortunately. In that case, it's just way too flat. And there are two problems. It's not immersive, and there is just weird difference in distance. Because if you are looking in front of you, the distance is quite small. But if you are looking on the opposite side of the display, it's quite far. And this may also cause some weird view angles, and again, if the display quality is a little bit worse, you may have like different colors or something like that because of the view angle. So I think the 1000R is sweet spot. Unfortunately, not all of them do have it, but this is something that I would recommend from my experience. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to write them down in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe will help me to grow this channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you and bye.